All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Jacqueline, and I will be hosting today's grain bowl cooking session. I'm originally from Providence, Rhode Island, but I currently attend Cornell University. I'm in the MPH program, and I have a concentration in food systems and health. But before that, I was actually in culinary school, and I have some culinary background. That's the cooking. And today, we're going to kickstart the food waste reduction cooking series. There's a total of 7 or so, and I hope that everyone can join all of them. That would be lots of fun. And you'll see that we're going to build your skills, not only with cooking new ingredients, but also learning how to reduce the food waste that you may accumulate in your household. So just a quick question, another one. What is the most common ingredient in your kitchen that you tend to waste or just toss? If you want to unmute, that's cool. If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. I know for me, it's it's wine because I tend to open my bottle of wine. I don't finish it. But I also tend to waste bread. I eat more rice than bread, and every time I buy a loaf, it just goes to waste, unfortunately. So I try to steer clear from that. Let's see. Oil. Okay. Celery. Okay. There's celery juice. I don't know.
From the CSA.
Vegetables. Is it mostly like root vegetables or just all vegetables? Like
whatever I get at the CSA ends up in my compost because I don't have time to cook. It's very depressing.
Interesting. Okay, so we can see if we have alternatives for that instead of just tossing them. We'll go into that as we cook. Okay. Okay, so there's a lot of celery I'm seeing. I don't know if anyone likes celery juice. Doesn't sound appetizing, but if you add apples to it and ginger, there you go. Yeah, greens and celery, couscous. Yeah, grains tend to be wasted a lot because you'll see what I have here. It's just a larger portion usually when you make it, and not all of it gets eaten all at once. All right, compost frozen leftovers. Okay, awesome. All right, thanks for that, everyone. Today we're going to make the sesame beef and broccoli grain bowl. So here are the basic ingredients. Here's the salt, garlic, ginger, onions, broccoli, lemon, eggs. I made the quinoa ahead of time so that you can see the end product, but I will also show you the ingredient before it's cooked, just so you have an idea if you're not familiar with it. And then we have the seasonings. We have some chili, sesame, black sesame seeds. You can also use the white ones. That's okay too, whichever you prefer is fine. Then I have paprika because I tend to add paprika and everything. And honestly, use whatever seasoning you have at home. If you like a specific flavor, feel free to use that. Hello. And then I have the black pepper here, sugar, soy sauce, and oil. Okay, so I don't know if anyone's cooking at the same time, but if you don't have these ingredients, that's okay. The grain bowl is so versatile. You can use couscous, quinoa, rice, or anything really that you like as a starch or grain. And then if you have greens, if you don't have broccoli, let's say, you can use kale, which I'm also going to add to mine because mine is almost ready to go and I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to add that to mine. And then we have the beef. So I'll show you the beef in a moment. But to get started, we need to heat the pan. And I will show you that in a second when I start putting things in the pan as well, okay? And like I said, I have the quinoa ready. So we're gonna start with the broccoli first. And it may, in the recipe that's written, I do the beef first, but for now we're gonna do the broccoli, okay? Because the beef is pretty fast. So I'm just putting oil in the pan. It's on medium heat right now, which is okay. Now, excuse me, when I cut the broccoli, I know some people don't really like the ends. I'm okay with it, so I'm just gonna toss it in there. But since it's a bit tougher, I'm going to throw those in the pan first before I put the florets in, just because just so it cooks evenly. But yes, I'm heating up this pan right now. Another thing that you could do with the ends, you can cook it in a soup. You can make a cream of broccoli soup. That's another option when it's cold out, if it's raining, or just when you want soup. So yes, we're gonna get started with that. But before we toss the broccoli into the pan, we're gonna add some of the ginger and garlic, just for some flavor. I'm gonna brown that. And I'm just gonna grab those, so just bear with me one moment. Some people like to boil the broccoli first before they saute or make it into some kind of stir fry. I'm just going to put it in the pan because you don't want it to be too soggy, and it'll cook evenly. It'll be fine. And you want that bright green color too. The moment the color starts getting like darker and dull, that means the flavor, you're losing the flavor, and it tends to get mushy. All right. So while that's heating up some more and starting to brown, I'm just gonna show you the quinoa before and after, okay? So I don't know if you can all see this, but I have a huge container of quinoa. And this is what it looks, for those who aren't too familiar with it, it's very, very small pearls. There. And let's say you're using a cup of quinoa, you can use like 2 cups of water and just let it, you don't necessarily have to cover it. Just let it cook so that it expands a bit. And I hope everyone can see this all right. So it expanded a little bit and the texture is much softer. And then if there's excess water, you can either let it dry for a bit or just drain it, which is fine too. And quinoa, for those who haven't tried it, it doesn't have much flavor. So when you're, but it's delicious when you mix it with other things. So I like putting goat cheese or just adding some seasoning to it. That's okay too, but that's for a different recipe. But today we're gonna do the beef, right? Sesame beef. So if you have sesame oil at home, you can drizzle a little bit in the quinoa so you have a nice flavor as well. So that's the quinoa. All right, let me see this garlic. All right, it's starting to brown, and you're gonna smell it in the house too. It's gonna be great. There's also, if you don't like cutting garlic, there is the pre-fried garlic. I don't know if anyone has seen that. They have the jars. I always have it here just because I always use garlic. But that's another option, and it's good so that you don't have to waste fresh garlic, right? Okay, so this is starting to brown. All right, so I'm going to put the ends of the broccoli first, and I'll show you this in a moment. I know you can't really see what I'm doing right now, but I'll show you. Okay. Right, let's see. So once again, I'm showing you this from the other square, the Zoom square. It says Jacqueline's iPhone. And you're just gonna let this cook. And I just put a little bit of garlic because the beef is going to have garlic and ginger as well. So this is just adding some flavor. And then I'm gonna let that cook first. And then I'm going to add the florets right here. And then I have the kale that I'm going to use for mine. You don't have to use kale if you don't like kale. You can use any greens you like, really. The flavor, the flavors of greens are pretty versatile, like string beans or even bok choy if you like bok choy. I am going to show you another thing though that I kept while I was prepping. So I have onion peel, onion scraps, ginger scraps, garlic scraps, right? So what you could do with this, you could either compost it or you can use it in a stock, which we'll be doing in the next lesson of the series. So I'm going to hold on to mine because I'm going to make the stock. And then another quick tip, excuse me, we have lemons here, right? Here. So we're going to use the lemon juice for this recipe, but we don't necessarily need the peel. What you could do with the peel is either put in your water, That's always a great treat. I love this dessert. I slice up pineapples, I put it in a baking pan, and then I add the lemon peels, cinnamon, sugar, put it in the oven or on the stove, and it's great. And look at that, you're not wasting the entire lemon, right? So that's another option. All right. So this is still going. So I'm going to add the florets now. Okay, and then we're going to add some kale. And since we don't want the greens to burn too much, we're going to add like just a sprinkle of water. I'm gonna add some salt and pepper. If you like the red chili flakes, you could always add that too for some spice. I'm gonna show you right now. So since it's usually just me, I'm putting a lid on this, by the way. So since it's usually just me having dinner, I portion out my meals because I don't like to waste I don't like wasting grains. I don't like wasting anything really. So yeah, I have like the quart containers that I portion my meals in, and I'll put the grain, I'll put the greens, and then I'll put the beef. And it's kind of like meal prepping for me, and I also don't end up wasting food, so it's great. All right, so while that's going, I'm gonna take out the beef. So I'm gonna show you, I purposely didn't prep this yet. I'm showing you what I purchased. So you can get your beef anywhere really. And the beef we're using is ground beef. And what I typically do when I go food shopping is I get it in bulk, and then I portion it out right when I get home, and I put them in small Ziploc bags or large ones. I mean, it depends on what you have, what type of meat you have. Small ones, large ones, I have them here. So here's a large one. I usually use the smaller ones. But you can put them in the Ziploc bags and then just put them in the freezer. So I have stuff here. So it's about this size. And you can just, you can label if you want, but what I like to do is oldest towards the front, and then the newer ones towards the back. So it's FIFO, first in, first out. And it really helps because if you don't want to eat all your meat all at once in one night, if it's just you, or if it's like 2 people, or it's just too much meat, that's okay. You can just portion it out, put it in the freezer. Or what I'm going to do with this today, since it's just me, I'm going to prep the ground beef for the patties, or for the patties or the meatballs. And I'm going to put them in the refrigerator. I'm only going to cook what I'm using today, or what I'm eating today. And then the rest I can cook for tomorrow, which I'll probably finish it by tomorrow, to be honest. So I'll cook it for tomorrow, and that could be my lunch or my dinner. But I'm going to cook it in a way that it's a bit different. So we're going to repurpose it, right? So it's going to be a similar season, or it's going to be the same season, but I'm going to saute it with tomatoes tomorrow, let's say. Or the third option, which is the soup, the meatball soup. So all you would have to do is shape it a little differently. And I'm going to show you that in a moment. But before that, I'm just going to check on the broccoli and the kale and see with the lid it's steamed a bit. And I'm going to show this on the camera. All right, so it's nice and green, which is great. That's how you want it. You don't want it to be too slow. You don't want to overcook it. And if you like, softer broccoli, that's totally fine too. You can put that. But I like my broccoli bright green. See how bright that is? So I'm just going to lower the heat a bit for this. Okay. And my, by the way, my stove is electric. So if you have like a gas stove, I say put it a little bit lower, because that flame tends to be stronger and you don't want to overcook it. Like it's going to cook really, really fast. Let's just put it that way. So side. This is still on low heat. We're going to prep the beef now, okay? So I have a really large bowl. I'll just show you like this as I go. But we can add the rest of the garlic and the ginger, and it's minced, okay? You don't want big chunks of ginger in the patties. I mean, unless you really like ginger, that's okay too. So have that in there. We have the onions. And then we have the eggs right here. I'm putting 2 eggs. Mine. And this is to make the, to bind everything. Okay. Great. Oh, and one more thing, when everyone's cooking, always try your food. That's your treat. So I have multiple spoons here because I'm gonna try it afterwards. Of course, when it's all cooked and everything's to temperature. All right, so like I said, I have paprika because I love using paprika in all my food, but the recipe calls for chili powder. I also have that. So I don't really measure my spices. The recipe does. I don't. I eyeball it. You can add some sesame now. And I kind of have an idea of like what a teaspoon is, what it looks like, or a tablespoon looks like. So I'm just gonna, okay. Now we have, that was chili powder, paprika, and some sesame seeds. We're gonna add some sesame seeds into the mixture, and then we're gonna have some sesame seeds after as well. Okay, like to the actual green bowl. Okay, so black pepper. I'm gonna add some salt. If you like spicy, there's also sriracha, which is a hot sauce, like a chili sauce. That's if you like it spicy. And it goes well with the flavors of sesame oil and all that. Okay, so I have my mixture. Going to squeeze the lemon juice into this. Okay. See that here. I'm going to lower this so you can kind of see it. The seeds are in there, that's okay. Funny story, when I was little, my grandmother used to tell me that if you have seeds, if you eat the seeds, the fruit's gonna grow in your tummy. And until this day, I remember that story. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm alive, so I'm guessing the seeds are okay too. But of course you can take it out. It's just my little thing. All right. Okay, so this is what I have in the bowl for now, and it doesn't look that beautiful, but it's going to be delicious. Okay, so I just grab a fork. I'm just mixing it all in. And like I said, I'm using the entire package of ground beef. And then I'm going to use it for tomorrow. I'm going to cook it for tomorrow as well. It's not just for my meal today. Okay. And usually when you're handling raw meat, poultry, anything like that, it's good to keep it a little farther from all the other ingredients. There, because you don't want to cross-contaminate. And my broccoli is doing all right. Broccoli and kale mix, still going. It's on very low heat, so it's not like it's overcooked or anything right now. All right, so I'm adding this to my bowl, adding the ground beef. And I usually like using my hands, but for today, we're just going to mix it with this fork for now. Okay? And I'll show you once I have it evenly combined. And do we have anyone in the audience that does not like beef based on preference, flavor, or you just don't eat beef, you prefer having like plant-based? Do we have anyone in the audience? No? Okay, well, if you're not into beef, you can always make turkey. Okay, okay, thanks, Beth. Yeah, so you can make this with turkey, ground turkey. If you wanted a vegetarian or vegan option, you can always use tofu. I love tofu, and it's very. I feel like it's like a sponge. It absorbs all that flavor. You can use the same exact marinade for that.
Jackie, can I ask if you're using tofu, do you just keep it in like chunks, like in cubes to mix it in with this, or do you actually mash it in?
So when you mash it, or at least from my experience, when you mash the tofu, you can't really get it back into shape unless you have like, since you have the egg, so that wouldn't really be vegan, right? The egg would help it, but it's still gonna crumble. That's the only thing with tofu, or like I said, from my experience with tofu. So what you could do is squeeze out all the water, and then you'll see, and get firm tofu. Because there's different types of tofu, right? There's the soft one, semi-firm, and then like extra firm, or firm and extra firm. So get the extra firm if you can. And then squeeze out all the water and cut it into cubes. And then with the tofu, you can actually use your hands. So because it's so delicate, even though you're getting the extra firm, it's still delicate. So just mix everything with your hands. And then it'll be more of a stir fry at that point, but that's okay because the grain bowl doesn't have to have patties. It doesn't have to have specific greens. That's the beauty of it. You can have fun with it, and you can use all the ingredients that's in your refrigerator already, as opposed to buying new things and not using what's in there, right? So, okay. So I just remembered I have to add the sugar and the soy sauce. The key is the soy sauce. So we have to add that still. All right, so it's pretty mixed though. See, it's combined. Adding about a teaspoon and a half of sugar. I'm using white sugar. Use brown sugar, that's okay too, because that actually brings out the color. A nice color when you're making this. Okay. And then we're going to pour some of the soy sauce. I'm going to eyeball it based off of the amount of beef I have. If you have more, then I know I put 1 cup in the recipe, but that's based off of low sodium soy sauce, by the way. So if that's an issue, or if you're using the regular soy sauce, then I'd say just put a little less. You don't want it to be too soggy either. Okay, so I'm mixing it some more, and I'm going to show you afterwards. Okay, and for this, we don't have to use breadcrumbs or anything like that. I'm sorry, I know you can't really see my face. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you don't have to use breadcrumbs. If you would like to, that's totally fine, especially because not everyone uses breadcrumbs all the time, right? So you're gonna have it in your shelf or wherever you store it. And you don't want that to go to waste. You don't want it to go bad. So you can feel free to add it if you want. It'll add flavor to your dish too. Okay, is that okay? Can everyone see? Okay, so that's okay. Now we're gonna start forming the patties, okay? But before I do that, I'm just gonna turn off the kale and the broccoli. Put on it, actually, put it there. And all we would have to do is reheat it. Now, the great thing about this dish is that if you have extras, once again, if you have extras, you can let each item cool for a bit, and then you can just portion it out as you go. So that's one option, and that's why I'm letting this cool a bit. I'll reheat it when I'm ready to eat, which is not going to be till way later. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just letting it cool because your food can go bad if it's still hot and you put it in the fridge. You have to watch out with your temperatures. Same, especially actually for the meat. And I'm going to use a plate. I'm just going to make a few. So I'm going to grab about, let's see, what is this, like 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons of the mixture. I think someone's hungry too. I'm sorry. So I'm making patties, okay? For this one, for this particular one. So this is the size, mine. You can see the chunks of onion. I diced mine a little bit larger, so that if it's not flavored enough, if you want more salt, if you want more sweetness to it, if you want more soy sauce, that soy flavor, or lemon juice, then the great thing is that you can add more to it afterwards. Throw it back in the pan, place it back in the pan, and then add more of that flavor that you like. Or another option is to flavor the grain that you're using. Like you can make fried rice instead. And that's actually great for repurposing too. If you had it the first night as like plain rice, or plain quinoa, the next night, why don't you make fried rice? And you can even, if you haven't cooked all the patties, you can always, you don't have to form it into patties. Just make it, like fry it first and then add the rice, and then that can be like a fried rice bowl already. It's another option.
Jackie, when you do this for the other two recipes, are they going to be about the same size patties for all three?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, so for the second one, which is the beef patty sauteed with tomatoes, like a tomato sauce, it's patties. It's this size. Okay, and then for the soup, I'll show you the shape. It's more of a meatball shape. Same flavor, but meatball shape. And here. So about that size, but a rounder shape.
And that cooks in the broth when you're making the soup from raw?
Yeah, if you want some type of like crispiness to it, then sear it first. And then the middle doesn't necessarily have to be cooked just yet, because it's going to cook in the broth. And you don't want that like overcooked flavor or texture, I should say. So yeah, thank you for asking that. It's a great question. I'm making both meatballs and patties now, just because I am prepping what I'm going to use for tomorrow as well. Okay, so I'm going to store this now, and I'm going to put it in a small container, and I'm going to cover it up really well. And then I'm going to use a smaller and if you have a cast iron, that would be ideal. That's always nice, of course, but we're going to use a small skillet. I have a cast iron, but I think it's going to take us more than the hour that we have. So I'm going to avoid using that for today. But that cooks, the flavor is really nice when you use that. The texture is really nice too. So I'm going to put this on medium high. So when you're frying, you want to, I'm just gonna put this in the fridge actually, excuse me. But this will be stored properly and sealed. Okay. All right, so when you're frying, and I'll bring you a bit closer so you can see. When you're frying, you want it to be on high heat, but we're going to slowly increase this. Then we're going to add the oil. And for this, you can do a shallow fry. We have like deep frying, shallow fry. We're going to do shallow fry because these aren't too large and healthier. And I'm just using vegetable oil. If you like using a different type of oil, that's totally fine too. Okay, fry more. Yeah. And the trick to having crispy fried food, delicious crispy fried food, would be to put few pieces or items in the pan. If you overcrowd it, the heat is going to, you're going to lower the heat basically. And then that's when your food starts to get mushy or oily. We don't want that. Or oily, more oily than it should be, to put it that way. I have my patties right here, very small. Okay, we're just gonna wait for that to heat up. So while we are waiting for that, because that is, I want that to be at a really, really high temperature. While we're waiting, Baz is going to play a short video on grains, just so that you can learn a little bit more about that.
There are so many different whole grains out there. You've probably tried like whole wheat bread or oatmeal or brown rice, but have you tried grains like amaranth or buckwheat or sorghum or millet or quinoa. So long as these grains have all of their bran, germ, and endosperm, they are considered a whole grain. So something, as I mentioned, like all-purpose flour would not be whole grain. White rice, which has had some of its bran polished off, that would not be a whole grain. Corn, if it still has all of its bran, germ, and endosperm, it is whole grain, but a lot of corn products have the germ removed, so those would not be.
Okay, thank you, Baz. So as you can see, there's lots of grains that you could use for this. I usually have rice, or I make noodle bowls. It's really convenient for me as a student. It's so convenient to have those items ready and then just create a bowl. Like I literally grab a bowl and then I just pile it on. So that's great. And then you have the rest stored for the next day, or you can prepare it a different way for the following day. Let's see. Oh, I just saw the ground turkey. Yeah, ground turkey is delicious too. The only thing with ground turkey is that you have to make sure that you don't overcook it because it could get really, really dry and it's not as appetizing. All right, so my oil's ready. And another way you can test the oil or check that it's warm enough or hot enough is here, let me grab my camera. Okay, so you see how it's not as thick anymore? That's the consistency you want. But you also don't want to burn your oil. Excuse me, Eddie. Oh, funny. So yes, so you don't want to burn your oil because at that point it's just going to be smoking everywhere, and then the flavor of your food isn't going to cook properly. So I'm going to start now, and I have tongs, but right now it's too fragile. If I use the tongs to place it in, it's going to break. So you can use like a spatula. I have a spatula. So I'm going to put this in whatever you have at home, really. And I'm using a smaller skillet. So I'm only going to place 3 inside. 3 in the pan. Once again, just so you don't decrease the temperature. And you don't have to flip it just yet. Take your time. In a second, I'll show you the pan. If you'd like to use to cover it with a lid, you can. You really don't have to. Just keep an eye on it, especially because you're using a higher temperature, right? It's on high heat. And we're gonna let it brown on each side. And you want a nice, maybe like this color brown, a little darker than that, so it has a nice crisp to it. I know when I'm eating a certain meal, I like all different textures in my food. So my grain is going to be a bit softer. I like the protein to have like a crunch to it, and then the greens have like a firmness to it, but not crunchy. So it's all different flavors, all different textures. Makes it a lot more fun. And you want it spaced out. You don't want them to stick together. Let's see. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I guess I was just really thinking about that comment that it cooks better when it's not overcrowded. I think because I'm often cooking for 4 people, I crowd everything.
Yeah. So no, I mean I do that, but that ends up being a stew for me. So that's the only issue. But you'll be able to tell the difference when you do it like a little at a time. You'll see. It's going to take more time. I will tell you that, but in terms of quality, it's going to be great. So I'm flipping the patties now. Okay. And I'll show you again. Let's see. Thank you so much for your patience, by the way, with the 2 cameras. So see how brown it is? That's the color you would like. And then another trick that I'll teach you So you don't have to go to culinary school. I'm just asking for some tips. So when you're cooking meat, or like steak even, right? Let's say steak. You can use this part of your hand, okay? That's a way to check whether it's like rare, medium rare, well done, all that. So when it's right here, the flesh is still a little soft, right? So here, I'll show you. The thumb to the index finger. So it's still a little soft, so that means it's pretty rare. And then as you go, it gets even more firm. So that gives you an idea of when the meat is cooked. So when it's the thumb to the pinky, it's extra firm. That means it's well done. So mine is definitely, I just flipped it, so it's definitely not ready yet. It's still pretty rare. Another thing you could do is just check it with a thermometer. Of course. Okay. All right. So while that's cooking, I'm going to start building the bowl, okay? You grab the quinoa right here, and I have extra quinoa. I'm going to store this similar to the beef. I'm going to store this in a sealed container. Just for timing, I'm going to put this in the fridge afterwards. Okay, so I'm putting about a cup and a half, depending on how much you want, of course. You know what, I'll put more because why not? So there you go. All right, there's the quinoa. It's still cooking, it smells really nice. Then we're going to add some of the kale. We can reheat this, but I'm going to eat later, so I'm just gonna reheat it, everything later. All right, let's see, let's go for the floor. Okay. And I'm going to add some of the kale. You know what? We're going to need something. Probably going to help me. Here. So I'm going to grab the kale and the broccoli, and I will show you this in a moment. And it's a good way to see what you're eating. And it's really simple, the flavors that I use, right? You can use whatever seasoning you have at home. If you don't have that, it's okay. There's actually a resource on the website, the CCE website, and along with the email too, actually, for different spice blends if you want different flavor profiles. I use soy sauce, so I usually like using sesame and soy sauce with some ginger, some lemon juice for the acidity. So you can do that. You can change it up, but like I said, that's the great part, because not only are you catering to your personal preferences in terms of flavors and ingredients, you're also catering to your nutritional needs, your health needs, culture, your food culture, right? That's a big thing. And that's why I also chose the beef recipes. I know not everyone eats beef or meat in general, but the great thing about the bowl is that you can change it up to how you want it and to what you have in the fridge, so that you don't have to go out and buy extra ingredients when you already have it in your freezer or your refrigerator. All right. So they're almost ready. Okay, so far, my bowl, I'm going to show you on the other square, right here. So it's looking like this so far. I just have the quinoa and the kale and broccoli there for now. Then we're going to add the patties. So see how, this is the color for both sides now, by the way. Okay. And they're cooking nicely. Okay. And at this point, the thing that I mentioned earlier, remember? Let me put this down. Okay, so remember I mentioned try your food, taste it? That's what we're gonna do right now. I'll just use this fork actually. The quinoa I know isn't really going to have that much flavor, but I want to taste the kale. Okay. Enough salt, yeah. There's salt there. I'm not tasting the garlic as much because I put very little, but you'll taste the garlic in the patties. But that's good. There's the texture of the broccoli and the kale is just right. It's not overcooked or anything. All right. All right, so now I can turn this off. Oh, actually, I still have more over here. But for the purpose of the class, I'm going to plate these now, okay? And it's still oily, but that's okay. Like, I'm okay with that. Usually you'd like to put it on a paper towel or something to remove the excess oil. But since my quinoa is not as it's not as moist, I'm just going to add the meat, and then I'm going to have it mixed into the quinoa, mixed into the broccoli. Add some flavor, right? Why not? Okay. Okay, I'll show you. 1 minute. And then I mentioned earlier too that I'm going to add the sesame seeds afterwards, right? So I'm just going to sprinkle some over the broccoli, just the bowl in general. And now I will show you. Beautiful. And feel free to add your hot sauce or anything else, any other flavors that you like. So there's the quinoa, your greens, and I put 3 there. That's my portion.
That looks so good.
Thank you. Trying to think. I usually add hot sauce to mine, but if you don't like hot sauce, that's okay too. So yeah, so here's the bowl. And the rest, I'm going to cook just because I have it out already, and I'm sure I will probably get hungry and want more. But I do have the excess ground beef mixture in the refrigerator. I'm going to store it. I'm going to seal it up. I'm going to store it for tomorrow. Okay. So does anyone have any questions with anything about anything? I'm just going to add these. Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you once again. And I hope I get to see everyone at the next lesson.